Morning, friends. So at the moment in church we're talking a little bit about the whole business of love, and I use the word business deliberately because insofar as love involves a giving and a getting, that's exactly what love is. It's a business, it's an exchange, it's reciprocal. When you walk into an establishment that sells coffee, you go in there with something to give, right? You've got money. And you go in there with something you want to get. You want to get a cup of coffee. You understand? Love is similarly like this. Love that is all giving and no getting isn't love. It's martyrdom. And it doesn't work. Now, those of you who've lived a little bit will have noticed by now that different people give love and receive love in slightly different ways. And those differences make the business of love very interesting and very challenging. For example, a husband might demonstrate that he loves his wife by working hard, by doing lots of overtime and pulling extra shifts, by doing everything that he can to provide extra for his family. On occasion, he might purchase a wee gift for his wife, perhaps some flowers or the latest bracelet from Pandora. And when he does all of those things, that's his way of saying, I love you. And it's great. The problem is, his wife, in my notes, it's parenthesis, ungrateful wife, doesn't get love in any of those ways. She doesn't receive love in any of those ways. She doesn't feel it. So while he's saying, I love you, she's hearing none of it, because the way she gets love is by going on long walks and having long talks. And so this husband and wife, who probably love each other very much, don't feel that they love each other very much because they both speak at cross purposes. And so the trick, so we are often told, is to learn how our lovers give and receive love. When we talk about love, right? We're talking about something that you give and something that you get. Bible. At the moment in church, we're working our way through the book of Ruth. The story thus far is that two of the main characters, an old lady called Naomi and her young daughter-in-law Ruth, have been going through a hard time. Everything that could go wrong in life has gone wrong in life. Their husbands are dead. They're running low on money and lower still on hope. So in desperation, they return to Naomi's hometown, the village of Bethlehem, whereupon the young Ruth immediately sets out to get herself a better love and a better life. She realizes that she's in a bad place, and she determines quite rightly that she doesn't want to stay in that bad place. And so she gets up off the sofa, puts her best foot forward, and goes out on the prowl for both love and life. She needs a man and she needs a job. And last week we learned that as she was prowling for both of those things, God was with her in the prowl. Eventually she ended up on a farm that belonged to a rich eligible bachelor whom she brazenly asked for a job, which he kindly gave to her. Then we are told, Ruth chapter 2 and verse 10, at this, that is, having been given a job, she bowed with her face to the ground, and she asked him, why have I found such favour in your eyes that you notice me, a foreigner? So at this point, the young Ruth knows that she has been noticed by a man, and she's pretty sure she knows why. Observe, please, the part of the male anatomy that she is very careful to mention. The eyes. Now, this is a very politically incorrect thing for me to say, but hey. Looks matter. They matter a great deal. The fact is, there is such a thing as a standard of feminine beauty. And the more a female conforms to that standard, however ridiculous it may be, the more her pool of opportunities are going to be. And to suggest otherwise is to wish the world was different from the way the world is. And in this sentence, the young Ruth is evidently aware of her own attractiveness. When she thinks about the love she has to give, about the things she has to offer in this life, one of the first things she thinks of is her allure. She is perhaps cognizant of her full lips, of her symmetrical face, of her smooth skin, of her hourglass figure, or whatever the ridiculous standards were in her culture. And as she has those things in her head, she makes her play for love and for life. And so far it's working, right? Mission accomplished. The plan is going well. She's gotten up off the sofa, she's gone out, and she's caught the eye of the rich young bachelor. She's been noticed physically by the rich young bachelor. And she knows why. It's because the man has eyes. However, in the next sentence we discover that the man's eyes had nothing to do with it. Boaz replied, "I've been told." So what part of the male anatomy are we talking about now? The ears. It's not that he's seen something in this woman. It's that he's heard something about this woman. And so he says, "I have heard all the things you've done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband. How you left your own father and mother and homeland and came to live with a people you did not know." In other words, hey, I know all about your elderly mother-in-law. And I know that when she lost her husband and her income and was tottering on the edges of starvation, her future looked bleak indeed. Her life was over. There was no future with her, and yet you, a young, beautiful woman with your whole life ahead of you, with all manner of opportunities available to you in this world, devoted yourself to caring for this old, futureless woman. If you'd made different choices, your life would have been very different today. If you'd made different choices, your life would have been brighter and happier and more prosperous. But you didn't make any of those choices because you did the right thing. And I've heard that your life hasn't hitherto been about you getting your needs met. I've heard that your life has been about you meeting the needs of others. So what he's saying in this exchange is that the first thing I noticed about you wasn't your full lips or symmetrical face or hourglass figure or any of that silly nonsense. I didn't even pay attention to that. The first thing I heard about you was your character. Man, it's beautiful. Now, ladies, listen to me. Your husband can't tell you what I'm about to tell you because he'd get in trouble. Your man wants you to look good. He just does. He doesn't expect you to conform to the silly standards of beauty that change from one year to the next. He really doesn't, but he does expect you to look as good as you can with what you've got. No, this is actually serious. He doesn't like it when you let yourself go. He doesn't like it when you go shopping in your pajamas or any of that thing. He thinks it's disrespectful to yourself and to him, and he just doesn't like it. Now, I'm sorry that all men are this way. I apologize on behalf of all of us. I'm sorry, we're shallow like that, but that's the way we are. Okay? You may as well know that and play along and look as good as you can. Life is smoother that way. But, oh, I know, you're on edge. Having said all of that shallowness, you can be really beautiful on the outside and still be profoundly ugly as a human being. Have you ever met any of these people? Oh yeah. And the more you get to know them as human beings, the uglier they seem to become. And the reason for that, I think, is because character matters so much more than complexion. Who you are as a person actually matters so much more, one way or the other, than how you look as a person. And so in this little exchange, you have these two cross-purposed conversations happening at the same time. You have a woman who is aware of her external beauty, and she thinks that's it. And you have a man who is aware of her character, and for him, that's it. At this point, Boaz says something rather kind. He says to her, "May the Lord repay you for what you have done. May you be richly rewarded by the Lord, the God of Israel." Notice the word repay, and notice the word reward. He's saying, hey, young lady, in looking after this old woman, you've done the right thing in life. And when I look at you, my heart goes out to you. And I wish that your luck would turn. I wish that God would give you a break. I hope that good things will happen in your life from this day forward. And if you were to take this kind sentence out of context, it would be one of the cruelest and unkindest sentences in the Bible. Out of context, this sentence would say, hey, I'm sorry you've been going through a bad patch in life. I'm sorry for all the bad luck that you've gone through, and I know you could really use a break, and I hope God gives you a break. Good luck, I'll pray for you. End of story. How beige would that sentence be? I don't know what God does. And I don't know how God does what God does. And the reason I don't know those things is because those things can't be known. The Bible says, does it not, that God moves in mysterious ways. I do know, however, that rather than talking about what God might do in a person's life, we ought instead to ask, what can we do in a person's life? Right? Here's an idea. Why don't you just do something? Why don't you just do something? And that's very much the spirit of this sentence. So when the rich, young, eligible bachelor talks about God rewarding Ruth for her kindness, he immediately recognizes that he himself is the source of that reward. And as is often the case in life, he is the answer to his own prayers. Pray less, do more, is the motto of this sentence. So what he's saying here is, I've heard about your sad story, and having heard it, my hope is that God helps you. And I'm not going to wait for God to help you. I'm going to help you. I'm going to give you a job. I'm going to give you a hope. I'm going to give you a future. And notice, please, that in giving this help to her, he wants it to be very clear that this is not an act of charity. He wants it to be very clear that she's not a victim. She's getting no less than what she deserves. This is a repayment for her. Notice the word. This is a reward for her. Notice the word. Which makes this sentence incredibly affirming. Put yourself in Ruth's shoes. This morning when she got out of bed, she had no money, no job, and no future. And to her credit, she's put herself out there a little bit. She's asked this rich man for help, and having gotten that help, she now finds herself on her knees saying, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you so much, thank you so much, thank you so much. And Boaz says, no, don't thank me. This isn't charity. I'm not giving you anything here. This is just what you deserve. You've lived a good life. You've done right consistently. All that's happening today is you're getting the good luck you're finally getting the good luck you've deserved. Which is why this sentence points forward. Notice he says, may you be rewarded. May you be repaid. And you know, when you run low on love and luck, when you lose in life, it does no harm, I think, to hear every now and again that you deserve more. You deserve more. You deserve better. And so at this point you have two conversations happening. You have two very different people talking about the same thing, using different languages. The girl over here is saying, I look attractive. I look good to your male eyes. The man over here is saying, you are kind. And your kindness sounds so good to my ears. You have a man saying, I give love by providing for you, by building you up, by affirming you, by reminding you that you are a good person who actually deserves good things that you've earned. And you have a woman saying, I might get good things because I look all right. So notice then that having listened to what Boaz has said about the things he's heard, she then responds by talking again about the things he has seen. She says, may I continue to find favour in your eyes. Now, this is interesting and instructive. If she's going to continue to find favour in the eyes of Boaz, what's going to happen? Boaz is going to have to see her again. See what she's saying? I'd like to see you again. Now, ladies, I seem to be talking to the ladies a lot today. Look carefully at this and pay attention, because this makes a difference. Ruth would like to see the guy again, so she tells the guy that she'd like to see him. At this point, I will speak very slowly. Men are stupid. If you want something from a man, you have to tell him. This is because men, for all their innumerable talents, are not mind readers. If you want your man to give you love in a certain way, you have to spell it out clearly. You have to help him understand the way you want to receive the love you want to receive. Giving him the silent treatment won't work. Getting angry at him won't work. Nagging him won't work. Don't make your lover guess. It isn't fair, and it's a waste of time. So she wants to see Boaz again, so she lays it out there. I'd like to see you again. It's not rocket surgery, friends. Then look at what she says. She says, this is so beautiful. She says, you have put me at ease by speaking kindly to your servant. The phrase, put me at ease, is a nice phrase. When I started working through the text technically on Monday morning, I immediately thought of so many of you. You see, in the languages of the ancient Near East, this phrase, to be put at ease, means something like, it's hard to translate, it means, it's that deep breath that escapes from your lungs at the end of stress. So this is a phrase you would use a year after the divorce, when you had to live day by day, week by week, bill by bill, and you weren't sure you were going to make it, and then eventually you get to a place where you feel you'll be all right and you're going to make it, and you go, ah. This is a phrase you use where it's been bad news, bad news, bad news, bad news, and then when you finally get good news, ah. This is a phrase you use when you've gone through the medical struggles and the challenges, and then you go and see your doctor, and there's a big smile on your doctor's face, and you hear the words you've been hoping to hear, and it just, It is such a beautiful phrase. When Ruth says, you have put me at ease, she is saying, finally, for the first time in a long time, the clouds have finally dissipated, and I can see a brighter future. I can see an end to my struggles and to my pain and to my difficulties. And what's nice about this phrase, and I thought about this for you on Monday morning, is when she got out of bed that day, she didn't expect to be breathing easy by day's end. She didn't expect the good news she'd been waiting for so long would come that day. She was just a woman trying to get by, trying to do her best, to do whatever she had to do to make it in this world and make things better for herself. And kind of out of the blue, she breathes easy for the first time in years. You never know what a day can bring. We always say that negatively, don't we? Never know what a day will bring. Bad things might happen. But the upside of that saying is also just as true. You never know what a day will bring. Might be awesome. Might be great. Anyway, so she works in the field with the rest of the workers, and then they stop for lunch, and we're told that at mealtime, Boaz said to her, "Come over here." Question: why does he have to tell Ruth to come over here? Because she was over there. I spent 7 years at university to get that kind of detailed knowledge. Right? It's obvious, isn't it? He says come over here because she's not here, she's there. Why is she over there? She's over there for good reason. She knows that she's poor. She knows that she's a nobody. And so when she walks into the lunchroom and she sees all the action and the happiness and the importance happening over there, she immediately self-selects herself out of all of that and sits over there. Do you ever do that kind of thing? Do you ever stop yourself getting good things because you persuade yourself you don't deserve them? Do you ever find yourself saying, I could never and I would never and it won't work? And you spend your whole life talking yourself out of a better life? Is it not true to say of you that you don't need people to criticize you because you do a great job of doing that yourself? Negative people talking you down because you've got that covered. Maybe it will work. How about that? Maybe it'll work. Maybe you could. Maybe it will. Anyway, so she's over there. And he says, come over here. And he says, have some bread and dip it in the wine vinegar. Ooh, I burn with desire. When she sat down with the harvesters, he offered her some roasted grain. She ate all that she wanted and had some left over. In the ancient world, where you sat to eat said a lot about who you were and what your place was in the social order. This still exists in our culture at events like after a wedding. You go to the reception and you walk into the reception and you look at the seating plan and you don't expect to be at table 1 because you're not family, but you look at table 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You're still not there. You get down to table 16 and you realise you're sitting with people you don't know and don't like, with an obstructed view right beside the male washroom. And at that point you realise you don't matter in this situation. You're not one of the in crowd. This was huge in the ancient world. You perhaps remember that scene in the Gospels where the disciples are arguing about who should sit to the right and left of Jesus. Who's the most important? Who gets to eat closest to the action? So Ruth sits way over there because in her head, she's not important. And so Boaz says, come over here and sit at the top table. And notice the detail at the end of this sentence about her having leftovers. At the start of this day, she didn't have enough to eat. She was hungry. She's been hungry for years. And now she's got more than she needs. So here's the picture. Everyone has had lunch, they've all eaten their fill, and now they're sitting around and they've been eating grain. When you've eaten grain for lunch and you've eaten so much grain that you've had your full and you've got leftovers, What's the last thing you feel like doing? You go to the Olive Garden, you overdo the bread thing, you're done, right? You're in a carb coma. Everyone in the lunchroom is in one of these carb comas. Next sentence. She gets up. She gets up to glean. Notice again her sense of industry. Everyone's taking a break. Everyone's full. No one wants to get up. She gets up first. And if you want to get lucky and stay lucky in life, a little bit of industry never hurts, does it? And as Boaz watches everyone leave the lunchroom and go back to work, led by this industrious woman, he's clearly impressed. And then we read that he gave orders to his men. Let her gather among the sheaves and don't reprimand her. Even pull out some stalks for her and the bundles and leave them for her to pick up, and don't rebuke her. Another reminder that for her as a strange woman in a strange town, to be doing what she's doing is for her to take a risk. And isn't that always the case in life and in love? There's always a risk involved in getting what you want. Next sentence. So Ruth gleaned in the field until evening. Then she threshed the barley she had gathered, and it mounted to about an ephah. The word ephah is a unit of measurement, obviously, and in the ancient world, an ephah was enough grain to feed 50 soldiers for a day. I realise in saying that I know that, you immediately think I don't have a social life. And yes, there you go. Anyway, so how's this, right? When she gets out of bed that morning, her expectations are low. She's hungry. Her elderly mother-in-law who can't work is hungry. So she thinks, I'll just go to some random farm and I'll pick up scraps, and hopefully there'll be enough scraps to scratch together something for dinner tonight. By day's end, she's struggling in a different way. She's struggling to carry enough groceries to feed 50 soldiers. Next sentence, she carried it back to town, and when her mother-in-law saw how much she'd gathered, Ruth also brought out and gave her the leftovers from lunch. So notice the clever way this sentence builds. The elderly Naomi is at home, hungry and alone. It's been weeks, months since she ate a decent meal. Her whole life has been a struggle for food. She's perpetually lived on the edge of never quite having enough. And then Ruth struggles through the door, carrying enough food to feed 50 men. Oh, and then, by the way, she pulls out leftovers from lunch. So now not only are the cupboards full, tonight we're having takeout. By the end of this scene, the old woman's head is spinning. This amount of good luck requires an explanation. And so she launches into a spontaneous interrogation. Look at the way the sentences and the questions come rapidly in the next sentence. Her mother-in-law asked her, "Where did you glean today? Where did you work? Blessed be the man who took notice of you." As she's saying this, she's stuffing food into her face, crumbs flying out the corner of her mouth. It's like Senior's Day at the Mandarin. Then Ruth told her mother-in-law, "I've seen you." Then I had a really bad thought this week. I'm in my 40s, right? And I always think of myself as, because I'm in my 40s, that means I'm 40. And the truth is, I'm not 40. And the horrible thought I realised this week was I'm 7 years away from Senior's Day at the Mandarin. That's frightening to me. And also reassuring because it's cheap, so yeah, yin yang. Anyway, so she starts interrogating, and then Ruth says, the name of the man I worked with is Boaz. And then the light goes on in Naomi's head. "The Lord bless him," she said to her daughter-in-law, "for he has not stopped showing kindness to the living and the dead. For that man is our cousin. He is one of our guardian redeemers." Now I'll get into that detail a bit in a few weeks, and then you'll realise why I wanted to talk about this in the run-up to Easter. For now, let me just explain that a guardian redeemer is at the very least a person who helps you out when you're in a tight spot. We all need those. And at the best, he is a potential husband. So at this point, the old woman's stuffing food into her hungry face, and her mind instantly goes into matchmaker mode. Boaz, she knows, is rich and eligible. Ruth is young and beautiful. And what I want you to notice in this happy, calorific scene in the Bible is the change in mood. Thus far in the story, Naomi has been horribly depressed. Just last week she spoke about how bitter and resentful she felt about life. She said, remember, no, don't call me Naomi, call me Mara, which means bitter and resentful and unhappy. She was done with life. She was done with faith. She was done with optimism. She was done with believing the future could be better than the present. And now, with just a wee change of fortune, the mood becomes very different indeed. Doesn't take much, does it? To lift the spirits, to put a spring in your step again. A little bit of hope makes all the difference in the dark night and the grey day. Last sentence in this chapter. Naomi, scheming old bird that she is, says to her daughter-in-law, it will be good for you, my daughter, to go with the women who work for him, because in someone else's field you might be harmed. In other words, dude, this is an opportunity. Then look at the last sentence. So Ruth stayed close to the woman of Boaz to glean until the barley and wheat harvests were finished, and she lived with her mother-in-law. That's a totally disappointing ending to a hopeful chapter, isn't it? She likes him. He likes her. They're both available. And yet nothing happens. Nothing. Nothing happens for 2 months. Nothing. At the end of 2 months, she's still at home living with her mother-in-law, being interrogated every night when she comes home from work, and he still hasn't, popped the question or whatever. Nothing has happened. This is agonizing. This is the why does he never call stage of life. But it's a start. She has a flicker of hope and love. And better to have a little hope than not. More on these things next week. I'm getting dripped on, the roof's leaking, so yeah. Which isn't good when you're not here. Thank you for coming. God bless you. See you next time.